My name is Renee King. I am from the Boogie Down Bronx, by way of Jamaica. My parents are from Jamaica. Um, and what I do is I have a technology-enabled service called TechUrElders. And what we do is we help millennial caregivers and younger caregivers use technology to help them with their caregiving tasks and responsibilities. So if they're caring for mom and dad, we help them figure out some technology that can alleviate some of the burden of the tons of pressure and stress and caregiving tasks they have to do. This all started probably a couple years ago when I finally got the notice through a nurse that my mom has ALS. And the first thing that started to deteriorate, or the first signs that started to show for her, was her arms. Like her arms were, she couldn't lift her arms above her head, or she couldn't move them, her mobility in her arms. So during that time, I wasn't living at home. I was living in another state, but not too far. And my dad was helping to care for her in the sense of we would have to help her get dressed, help her, bathe her, feed her, different things like that. I used to come down once a week to their house to help bathe her and do different, give him a little bit of relief. When things really got hectic, so during that time, I wasn't really relying on technology. At that time, it was more so I was just driving down to come and help and see what I can do, and then go back home and still work my regular job. Everything was fine. It was one day that my dad had called me while I was at work and told me that he couldn't get my mom up. We called 911 and they came, they took her to the emergency room. And the first question they asked me was, does she have a DNR? I had no idea what a DNR was. I just was like, no, I know she doesn't have one. I don't know about that. So they said that, they're like, all right, just stay here. We're going to get her situated. And I was waiting for a while for them to come back and get us. Like we were waiting out, like in the emergency room, but outside. And I was waiting for a while and they didn't come back. So then I went looking for them. And I literally walked in on them trying to resuscitate my mom. I literally stood there like begging God, please do not take her. I watched it for like 9 minutes straight. Them trying to like bring her back to life. They did bring her back to life, thank God. But from that point on was really kind of this downhill spiral of where she couldn't stay at home. She ended up being on a vent. They had to put her on a vent because her breathing had seriously declined, her capacity to breathe on her own. At that point, we couldn't really take her home. There wasn't any way that we could manage all of that. Plus, in terms of getting her Medicaid is not very friendly to someone being on a vent in the home. So we had to put her in a nursing home. That was when things really got real. That whole entire process of like trying to fight for her to get into a decent nursing home, trying to fight for all of the services that she should get within what was going on. Because what I find is that when you're in these systems, if you don't show up and request and demand what you need, or what, the care, the level of care that your loved one should get, they just do whatever they want to do. It's just, they line them up. So then at that point, I made the decision of moving back home. My dad, with the disease state, kind of just, I think he was overwhelmed. And like, it was too much for him to handle. So he didn't check out. He did his part. His part was he would go and visit my mom, but the burden of taking care of them overall was on me. So going to the nursing home to make sure, going to the care plan meetings, talking with the physicians, seeing what we're doing with her services and her help, and making sure my dad was going to his appointments and like going through the emotions with him as he's dealing with, you know, like he was with my mom for like so long and they lived together and that was his love of his life. And here she is now, you know, bedridden. So it was a lot of like, man, just not being their daughter anymore per se, but more so being their like advocate of trying to navigate like filing all these like different paperworks to get them the different services that they require. At that point was when also with my mom's ALS, I kind of started looking for technology to help with her communication. Because she was at that, when she got on the vent, her speaking, her ability to speak, she couldn't speak. So I started looking for technology to help me with that and also to help me with just monitoring things, just overall. And when I started looking for that technology, I started noticing there are technologies out there. There's assistive technologies, there are caregiving and aging technologies, but the awareness on it is just so, it's either you're overwhelmed with all the different articles that tell you to go and do this, or you don't know that these technologies even exist. So my goal was to start a blog called TechUrElders to write about the different technologies that you can use to help you in this path, to help people like me, to help young caregivers who you get thrown into this situation that you totally did not prepare for. Like I barely adult on my own, and I'm still barely adulting on my own. I probably do more. I'm a better caregiver than an adult, interestingly enough. But I just wanted to find technology and share that with other young caregivers. Then during that process, I felt that I was adding to the information overload that I think a lot of caregivers go through, right? You fall into it and then it's like you get hit by article after article, by resource, by this person's like suggestion and this person's like advice, and you're just still navigating this like it's just rocky waters that you're just getting thrown all this stuff. So I wanted to figure out a better way of getting these solutions into the hands of these caregivers. So I started working on using AI to kind of automate the process. That's still a work in progress. But the goal is, as I talk to young caregivers, I always advocate and try to show them, when I hear their stories, the different points where they could incorporate technology to just alleviate a bit of the burden. It's not going to eliminate it, but it can help. It can give you some peace of mind. It can give you a little bit more flexibility. It can give you a little more time to yourself, different things like that. So now I will say my caregiving has changed since my mom passed. So it's definitely, since she passed and then we had to go through the whole funeral process, my caregiving now is more, it's a little less intense. A little, like I don't have to manage a whole care team, a nursing home team, and doctors that I have to, you know, advocate for someone who's living in a nursing home. Now it's more so managing. I'm now shifting my focus. I will say when my mom was alive and she was really sick, my main focus was really on her. So now my dad is relatively independent. What I do now with him is more so just support stuff, like going grocery shopping, making dinner, going with him to doctor's appointments, because I find that he doesn't articulate things really well to me or to the doctor. Going with him to those type of appointments, managing different finances, managing their household, or just making sure like people are coming in to help do different things like the lawn and the different aspects that I definitely can't do everything on my own. So I'm doing a lot of that and trying to prepare him for if and when he does decline in, as he ages and his mobility might decline or things of that sort. So it's more prep work. And I think I'm in that mode a little bit more because of what I experienced with my mom that gave me a jolt of, all right, this is on my radar. So that's what I do. And I think I'm also my main purpose probably right now for him is just to keep him from being isolated and keep him still involved and upbeat. Like I don't think I could ever leave him now. Unfortunately. Because of what he's been through, what we've both been through, I think I don't think I could ever. I think I'm going to have to, it's going to be me and him together. So that's my role. Outside of caregiving and outside of TechUrElders, one of the things that I started doing more formally is that I'm really into technology. I'm really into startups. I'm really into women who are launching startups. I want more women out in the world doing amazing things. So I coach women who have a startup or they have a business or they have an idea. And I specifically try to coach them on how to get funding for their idea. What are the other ways, like routes that they can get some more money so that they can go from it being a side hustle to being a main hustle. I do that. I have TechUrElders, and I also manage a strategy consulting firm. So that's also a lot of fun too. So these are the things that's work stuff. My passions, I do a lot of hot yoga, which I enjoy a lot. A lot of hot yoga, lots of wine, and that's about it. There's no significant other. There's no kids, no fur babies. I have a lot of godchildren, though, interestingly enough. I think the most rewarding part about caregiving was my caregiving experience with my mom and my parents led me to figuring out, like, getting on the right path of my purpose. So I think before this experience, I did a lot of things and I like tried a lot of different, avenues. Like I was into skincare, I was doing esthetician work, I was doing all different things, but caregiving really gave me my purpose. And the other blessing that I think it did to me was my mom and I, we had an okay relationship. We definitely butt heads a lot before her disease. We butt heads a lot. I remember, like, the main reason why I moved out of the house was because of how many times we like butt heads. I'm very independent, but that's also because of her, right? Like like that's all in me. It's her, like that independence. So of course we're going to butt heads. And I think I know within caregiving, it switched it. Like it switched this, like, it wasn't about butting heads. It was more about, like, I realized what I'm trying to say is I realized through caregiving what everything in life was preparing me for. Like us butting heads, I get it. Like that was all practice for me going into like these offices and like telling them like, no, like this is what you're going to do. Like you're going to, like, this needs to go. Like learning like all the stuff that she put me in, like debate class and going to like legal prep school and going to all these things. Like caregiving wrapped that up, all those things that she raised me to be as a strong person. And it like was like, all right, now you have to go. You have to like launch all of that she did. So it was like amazing to see when you reflect on it, to see that. That's it. I think the challenge, first of all, I think when you're caregiving, I think that challenge or whatever you find most challenging changes as you go through the journey, right? So I used to think what was like my biggest challenge was like not having, like trying to balance everything, right? It's like really hard to juggle working and caring for your parents. And I always felt one of the statistics that really scared me the most was the fact of that majority of like caregivers our age, we have like a high, if we stop working, we have a high likelihood of ending up in poverty. Like that really scared me. So I was very determined to work while caregiving, like to do both. And I also wanted to, I'm a firm believer of like, if caregiving is your purpose, it's fine. Like that's, and I don't knock anyone who says that. But I also believe like we all, like some people, if caregiving isn't your purpose, that doesn't mean you have, just because you're in the caregiving aspect, you have to, that's your purpose, right? So I think, yes, caregiving happens, but I don't want you to give up on your purpose. Like that was one of my other things. So I used to think balance was really hard, right? To, as a young person, when you're trying to, especially if you don't have like a husband or a wife and like kids to kind of like help you or to kind of like be your thing, you're kind of very alone, right? You're very alone in this where you go to work, you caregive, and then that's it. And you're like friends, unless they are also caregiving too. They understand to a certain extent, but they don't really get it. And like you're kind of, you don't have all that time to be like, oh, I can go hang out with them, I can go do these things. So I think that part is hard. But then I thought, then when I had to like bury my mom, that was like the harder part for me. And going through that whole process, that became really, really hard. Like I was rather shocked at how bad we are as a society in handling death and treating death, and like how we, like that is just, it's just a horrible experience. Horrible experience in terms of the process. But I don't know. So yeah, that was like, I would say that was one of my biggest challenges. I think another challenge that I think is communicating to your job, or like explaining to your job what's going on. Like it still feels like when I have to tell like a client of mine, like, okay, I can't make this or I can't do this because I have to go do this, or I need to like change my schedule. Like even just having to voice that is still a struggle for me, right? Because it's not as easy as when people are saying, oh, my child is sick, so I have to like take a sick day. It's like, I feel there's a certain level of like, it feels very weird when I'm like, oh, I have to go, with my dad and take him to a doctor's appointment. Like you kind of feel like, are they looking at you like, are you bullshitting, or are you like legit, like, is this really what you're doing? And like, why can't your parent like do this? Like, why is this or whatever, or you feel a little guilty. So I think that's one of the harder elements of it, of like having to adjust things because you have to make certain sacrifices. What would I say is there's a couple things that are hard. And I think right now it's still like so with TechUrElders was different when my mom was alive. versus now it's taken me some time to fully get back into it. So I think that probably is the biggest. When you step into this role, you get on this like treadmill of like doing actions, doing actions, doing actions. And if you're not careful, you don't realize that you actually you probably need therapy. Like, I definitely know I need to like find a therapist, talk to them, because you don't realize the emotional toll that it ends up like taking on you. Like, it really hits you. So because you're like in this action of like just doing, I got to do this, I got to fill out this paperwork, I got to take them here, I got to do this, and then you don't realize it until you like end up breaking down crying on an interview. So like that's one of the things. And I was like, there was this therapist who she's trying to like, her name is Dr. Jess, and she's trying to normalize wellness and therapy, especially in the Black community, because our culture is very like, no, like, you're fine. Like, like, just, this is how life is. Like, suck it up and like handle it. Like, that's what our culture is, right? So she's trying to normalize this. And one of the things she brought up, she was like, anything that's a life stressor, like if you move for a job, if your boyfriend breaks up with you, if a loved one passes away, like these are all like life stressors. And any of these things are triggers as for why you do need to talk to someone. You do need to, and it's better sooner than later because they all add up. So the sooner that you get this person or an outlet on board, whether it's talking to other caregivers, talking in these groups, talking to a therapist, like that's, I think, the battle of it. Because when you're so young of a caregiver, you like, your emotions take a back burner because you're like so busy trying to navigate this. And then it's like one day that emotion is going to come up and like really overwhelm you if it's not controlled. For people who are not caregiving, my advice to them is to get prepared. Like, as much as you can get prepared, like have the conversation, talk to your loved ones. And also, like, the conversation should go both ways. Like, it's not just about, okay, my mom and my dad, they're aging, so let me talk to them about what do they, how do they want to age? What do they want to do? What do they see as, where they want to be and all this stuff? How would they want this process? No, you need to have that conversation too with your, like, it should be a joint conversation and set it all up amongst everyone so that they know, like I know my mom and dad want to live in New York and they want to live in the home as long as possible. They do not want to go here. And if God forbid, like, you should know all that stuff, and you should know all that stuff about yourself too. And that should all be documented. You can set up technology earlier than later. Like, it's just basic things of even storing your documents on a secure site, right? So that we know where all the life insurance policies, we know all the stuff is where it is. It's one access to get that. Setting up a alarm system in the home so that you just know, like, God forbid something happens, like you have some protection and you can build that out. So just prepare as much as you can, like get knowledge about what's going on and then try to do your basic prep work. For the people who are currently caregiving, I would take a step back and try to see what technologies you can use to kind of alleviate some of the burden. And I think my biggest thing I would say if you're currently caregiving is let go of the guilt sooner than later. Like, let go of thinking that, oh, you screwed up. Oh, you didn't do this on time. Oh, you didn't, you should have you should have had dinner prepared earlier. You should have done this. like let go of that, and just know that whatever you're doing your best. It's okay. And some days are going to be amazing, and some days it's going to suck, and some days you're going to suck, and it's totally fine. Like, it's totally fine. And don't like beat yourself up about it. Like, as long as you are trying and you make your efforts and you try to balance as much as you can, that's it.